Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 5 of the ReFounded Project podcast. This is your host, Zach Paula, and my guest today is Mike Hardin. Mikey is a former Navy SEAL who served in the Navy for 9 years and made 2 deployments during that time. However, Mikey's story is far more than just his time in the military. After struggling with addiction for over 5 years, Mikey recorded this episode with me after being sober for 1 year and 1 day. This is truly a never give up story that inspired me and I hope inspires you. Without further ado, here is Mike Hardin. Mikey, how's it going?
Zach, how's it going, man?
Good, dude. Did I catch you at a good time?
Yep. I'm good to go. I'm actually driving. I got to Texas, but I'm in my car right now, trying to make sure I have a good signal. So if I'm coming through okay, I'll just kind of park right here and
Well, thank you for taking the
yeah,
time to be here. I appreciate it.
absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the the work you're doing so far to kind of restore some of the principles that the country's lost, man. Hopefully I can be value added in this talk and give your listeners something of value.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think your story definitely needs to be told. I really liked your Instagram post today. I was reading it, and we have a lot in common. Jiu-jitsu. I have a bachelor's in
Yeah,
psychology, so I saw you got your master's in
nice.
psychology. So I feel like we'll definitely probably
Yeah.
do this again, have you on another time at some point. But I usually start these out with just some random questions, kind of icebreakers, get to know you here. So first question here is biggest pet peeve.
When people are late, I think being on time is something we can control, and yeah, that really bothers me.
Yeah, being on time is like something that will set you set you ahead of like probably 80% of the population.
Yeah, it shows I respect your time. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And nobody's perfect. Everybody gets their one-offs every once in a while.
Right.
There are actual life circumstances, but for the most part, I think it's controllable.
What's the coolest thing you've bought this year, or your favorite thing you've bought this year?
Favorite thing I bought, probably all the jiu-jitsu rash guards. I train
Yeah.
at 10 Planet Denver, and they've just got really cool designs, and I use them constantly. There's tons of stuff I bought over the years that I never use. That either that or probably the car I'm in right now. I got really lucky. I donated my older car to a friend who was kind of getting back on his feet, and I was able, thankfully, to afford this one. It's an SUV. It gets great gas mileage, and
Nice.
it's fantastic. So I'm really grateful for that. Yep.
How long have you been training?
Uh Man, I'm going on 9 months
Okay.
consistently for jujitsu. I tried to get into it around 2018, a little bit after I got out of the teams. And dude, I'll be honest with you. I had too much pride and too much ego. I'd step into the mats and I'd just get embarrassed. It was exhausting and humiliating.
Yeah.
And dude, I let fear and pride get in the way. So I stayed away from it for a long time. But something moved and changed in me recently. And, that's kind of part of the story. And I was like, man, like something about jujitsu calls to me. So I stepped back into the mats February of this year, and I've stayed with it ever since. So
Yeah. I mean, not to get on a tangent this early, but I've been training for about 6 years now, and
nice.
I went to school in DC my freshman year and thought I knew everything because I'd always done well here in Texas, and I was like, I got this, no problem. Went to DC, got humbled super quick, came back, was pissed off at the world, and started jujitsu, and it's been such a good thing for me. John Machado had a gym here in Allen, so trained under
Yeah, man.
him.
Machado. Yep,
Yeah,
yep. That's
trained under
Joe
him.
Rogan's dude. Yeah,
So Jean Jacques, yeah, is where I think Joe
yeah.
Rogan got his black belt. So John is one of the brothers who's here in Allen, and then actually changed gyms here recently. Zena McCoy opened up what's now an Alliance affiliate. So Johnny
Oh,
Faria,
nice.
and so it's been a huge part of my life. I imagine so. 10th Planet, you're doing a lot of nogi.
Only no gi.
Only
Yeah.
nogi.
Well, sorry. There are some 10 planets I think that do incorporate some gi work, but 10 Planet Denver is entirely no gi jujitsu. Do you do both?
Yeah, I do both. I've really started to like nogi
Okay.
more here recently. Been
Yeah.
doing it more, so I like both. I want to compete here soon. I saw you done some competitions this year. I
Yeah.
guess it's not a
Yeah.
white belt
Yeah.
with nogi, but just as a beginner, which is awesome. How was competing?
Competing is great, man. It's practical application of the training, and it kind of helps prepare you. Somebody, if there's something on the line and you go into it, guys tend to be more aggressive, especially if you go against guys that they got something to prove, which I think we've all been there. And then you got like a group of people watching you, so you got to deal with the nerves and to try to like think through the positions. With a lot of people watching, I think just adds in that extra fear factor, and having to train yourself to calm down, think about position, and think about the next movements under pressure. 5 competitions. The goal was 3. I'd done one competition like 2 weeks into training in 2018. I got
Jumped right in.
smoked, just annihilated. Just imagine what you were like at 2 weeks of training. Now, I
Yeah.
knew nothing at all, but I threw myself in there, and I went against 2 dudes that had they were 4-stripe white belts. One dude earned his blue belt that day at the competition. So without further ado, I just got absolutely just annihilated. But yeah, dude, just the no gi thing is kind of been the bread and butter. I did a little bit of gi. I won a competition in gi, and honestly, I was just like, I don't know, man. I was just kind of over it. So have you competed before?
I have not. Definitely something
Okay.
I want to do.
Yeah,
I
no
think I want to
worries.
compete in both. It was funny. A coworker and I were talking the other day, and because he's kind of curious about jiu-jitsu and stuff, and I was telling him how great it is, how practical it is, how useful it is,
Hmm.
and that really until you train, you think until you train and you go there, and he's like, so like even a Navy SEAL, like do they get? You think a Navy SEAL? I'm like, yeah, dude. Like there's a Rangerback guy. There was a Rangerback guy when I trained in Allen, and yeah, it's not like you're right. It's an ego thing. Until you don't know, and everyone
Yeah.
starts somewhere.
Yeah.
And I do want to test myself. Obviously, I'm a 4-stripe blue belt, so pretty
Nice, dude.
close to purple now. So I want to get in there before purple, for sure. So I'm
Yeah.
not going up against just
Okay.
like savages.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the plan. That's the plan.
Yeah, but dude, there's so many great things I can say about jujitsu and about competing. And first of all, you would annihilate me, dude. 4-stripe blue belt. You would you would eat my lunch, man. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. And what's crazy about it also is I'll go to the gym sometimes. So I had this 5th competition. I didn't do well for whatever reason. My mind was just not there. I mean, I was calm, but maybe I relaxed too much. Who knows? And I lost pretty big. I only had 2 matches. I'm 36, so that division at the rank experience was only 3 guys, and I felt pretty down on myself, and it was more kind of grist for the mill, to kind of work with mentally as part of this like spiritual development, personal development of dealing with failure, or with what we call learning in jiu-jitsu, right, without making it about who I am.
Right.
Without being too embarrassed, without letting it cloud all the interactions that I have with people. And what's crazy is I got back in the next day, and the day after that, dude, I was tapping guys that were like in the intermediate division, tapped a dude that just got purple belt. It was just like ups and downs, and this
Yeah.
constant like long-term trajectory.
And
So
nogi's tough, right? Because it's not like with gi where it's like a white belt division, a blue belt division. You have guys that are like a purple belt in gi who consider themselves a
yeah,
beginner in nogi, right? And then they go and compete and kind of sandbag a little bit. But it's tough. And
there we go. Yeah.
I think the flow state, I think jiu-jitsu is one of the few things where I can really like clear my mind, where I'm not, have a bad day at work or family or whatever. You go on the mats and you're not thinking about any of that, right? You're just thinking about the task at hand. And so I can't speak highly enough about jiu-jitsu, but I saw that you train and thought that was cool today. Talk about that for a few minutes.
It's one of the coolest things I've done. And even like kind of like by abstraction, the number of people I've met, new people I've met, where I've mentioned jujitsu and they're like, oh, jujitsu. Dude, it's been like 70 to 80%. Like it's just like it's a thing that people are drawn to, for any number of reasons, which we could love to get into that at any point. For the discipline reason, for who knows, man, like just changing who we are by time spent on the mats in a defensive and attacking positions. But I mentioned jujitsu to most people, and a lot of them are like, "Wow, that's cool!" Like they do it as well, and it creates a more conversation. Those notions of the personal development aspect, where the more that I do in life, the more I get out there, I become more multifaceted, and I can relate to people, a variety of people, better. There's nothing more relatable than to have someone that has a similar commonalities, things in common, right? Like you
Right.
mentioned jujitsu. We've been talking about almost 10 minutes now. Like,
Right.
it's just one of those things. So imagine, and this is advice that I've, when I have the opportunities to talk to young men, which is part of a mentoring thing I do these days, is I'm like, try new things, and stick with it for a while, because when there's that skill development, when there's the humility, and most importantly, in my opinion, the community aspect that goes into pretty much everything that we do, it just builds on itself in such a healthy and value added way, and in ways beyond like what I can even imagine that have manifested in my life up to this point. And dude, I've only been doing jujitsu less than a year, and there's a lot of new things in my life this year, but doing more things makes doing more things easier. Whereas if I give into the fear of what am I going to look like, or the fear of, or am I going to be liked, and I don't do these things, then I maintain my isolation, and I don't change in an ever changing dynamic system.
Yeah, I mean, adversity is huge, community is huge. I think, especially in men, I feel like belonging to something that's bigger than yourself is a huge thing that people look for across gender. But I think jujitsu is one of those things that people just seem better for the most part. Obviously, there's always going to be people that slip through the cracks, but I think people who train, there's less ego involved with most of the people. At least at our gym, I have a great gym, great people, real family atmosphere. And it's a
Yeah.
great thing. I can't recommend it enough. Real quick here,
Awesome.
you kind of started a little bit of advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Man, that is such a tough one. um I don't know if it's advice, but it's just a concept of balance. Just we have a hand signal, and when we jump out of a plane, when I'm kind of waving my hand up and down, it's relax. um but seeking balance is really important. It's easy for me, and there's a time, and I think definitely in my life, where going 100% in a singular direction can definitely yield results. But if I don't take the time to slow down and smell the roses, I'm going to get burnt out. I'm going to forget why I'm doing what I'm doing. And seeking balance has, in this current trajectory of my life, years that I've gotten out of the teams, has just been like a constant and overarching theme, and I'm getting better and better at it. Balance is always like, it's dynamic, like with everything else, right?
Well, I feel like in the
Too
SEAL
hard
team too, it's really hard to find balance since you're 100% committed to the
Dude,
teams.
yeah, I never found it. I never had balance in anything in my life. And there's contributing factors all the way from, ostensibly birth, but really, childhood to that, to where going 100% one direction is the only thing that made sense to me. So when you say now, it's like, finding ways to not do too much, which I know would yield the best results, at least like in terms of achieving things.
In the short
But
term.
like back, yeah, exactly, in the short term, and that's the key component. The more I seek balance, and there's so many other things in my life that I go after. I can't, for me, for some reason, like I can't like seek balance directly. It's almost like indirectly through doing different activities, committing to different things. It's, I don't know, it's an art. I certainly can't tell you what balance is necessarily. It's one of those things where when I'm at ease and comfort, when I'm interacting with people, and I'm feeling calm and still able to kind of sharpen my axe, that's the balance piece. The balance piece is taking it easy and pushing hard, so I can absorb the training, absorb the lessons, absorb the education, and actually learn to do something with it. Full throttle is nice and it feels cool, until you're burnt out, or until I'm burnt out, and then I got to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, no, I love that, and it's something that you have to constantly practice, right? And it's, I think, to add on to that too, I have in a lot of different things. Jiu-jitsu, I'm real big into lifting. I work a lot of
Mm.
hours, and trying to balance everything, because they're all important. And then you got to also, what I try to do is just leave time to not do anything. I'm always burning the candle at both ends, it seems like. And so trying to find time to just stop is tough. And that's something I've been working on too. So I like that answer.
Yeah,
Um,
dude. Yeah, everyone, man. Yeah.
One of the big things I try to talk about in the podcast is honor. I think it's an important important topic here. What does the word honor mean to you?
Yeah, honor. Let me think about that one for just a second. Honor to me, for the most part, means kind of just like adhering to a code. Um, it for me, it's very close to integrity. It's if I'm honoring my word, that means I'm committing to my word. It means that I'm doing the next right thing because it's the next right thing. Um, it's there's a lot of cultural implications for the word honor, especially in the warrior class. Um, Man, that's a tough one. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. I
Yeah.
feel like I could just go run off on a tangent for that one for a while.
And again, I know this is the first time we've talked is on this podcast, I think I told you a little bit about kind of how I got involved in the community. But when I was 16, I raised money for Gary Welt, and Gary Welt was an East Coast SEAL who had ALS, and got real close to him, and I owe him so much because through Gary, I met Bob Guzzo, and then I raised money for Rob Guzzo's kids, and then through Bob, met other SEALs and had all these amazing opportunities that I owe it all to Gary, and I try to honor him with everything I do. Right, I feel a responsibility to live a life that would make him proud. There's
Hmm.
been people that I've lost, family members, and then just guys here and here that have passed away, and I do feel like an obligation where I think about them often. And would they be proud of the life I'm living, right? And I put a lot of pressure on myself too, because not everyone has the opportunities to talk to guys like you, and to be involved in a community like this.
Hmm.
And so every day I wake up and I kind of have that sense of, hey, like, make the most of each day, honor those that have gone before, and live a life that they would be proud of. That's kind of what honor means to me.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's very beautifully put. Especially when used in that way, like honoring somebody else's sacrifice. Well, how do we do that? It's the way, it's what my actions do to represent like values and morals. It's not the words that I use. It's the day-to-day activities. Do I take care of myself? It's the verbs in my life. What am I showing people by what I'm doing, and what does that express? Am I being accountable? Am I paying off debt? Am I being kind and considerate? Am I being of service? These are ways of just honoring the life that I've been given, right? Or honoring this new gift for me of sobriety,
Right.
is giving back what I've been given so freely, and living an example. And I have to be careful for me personally about this concept of pride, of my perception of your perception of me. Is it, am I doing things because I want you to see me doing these things? Am I doing it because I know it's the right thing? And for me, that's
Right.
been, again, here's the word balance, a balancing act over the past, I mean, most of my life, but especially again since I left the teams. It was a bit of an abrupt exit, and things had there were a lot of turn of events that I'd never planned for, that I found myself doing, like almost sometimes against my own will. It was crazy. Addiction is just insane. Um, but I found that it's all happened for a reason. And today I'm driving. I got into Texas a few days ago. My girlfriend came with me and just been visiting with family, and I'm making this last leg of this drive. And dude, it's a beautiful day in Texas. The hill country is nothing but fields and ranches, and I'm just like kind of reflecting on the day, and I'm feeling these things I haven't felt in a long time. And that's because, to kind of wrap it, bring it full circle, is I have been honoring this life that I've been given by doing the right thing. By being of service to people, by helping people out, and by learning how to love myself and respect myself, and to just like kind of take it easy on my own unrealistic expectations and my unrelenting standards. Again, this full throttle thing, we got to learn to throttle it back. I got to learn to throttle it back, and that even is honoring the time that I've been given in this life, and the people that I spend time with. So I think it
Right.
all just kind of blends together, kind of seamlessly. But I think it's in the Navy we've got honor, courage, and commitment.
Right.
I don't think it's one of those words that it really gets defined too much. I think we kind of just throw words around, or at least I always have. I always throw out integrity because I wasn't really in situations where I needed to express integrity. Nobody was ever there like observing me saying, hey, you lacked integrity. It's one of those like internal kind of grinding feelings when I know that I'm not doing the right thing. Honor is adhering to a code with and without somebody observing me. So like I said, for me, it's kind of along the lines of integrity.
Yeah, no, it's beautifully put. One question I ask everybody, and then we're going to jump into kind of your background here, but can you talk about somebody that you've lost that you think about every day, and maybe how you try to honor them?
Yeah, man, you know, there's like the literal loss of somebody who's like dead and buried. One person that comes to mind, I don't think about him every day, but his name was Marcus Mendelia, and he died of an accidental overdose. This was 2019, I believe, and I flew out to Pennsylvania to attend his burial, his funeral, and I remember standing at the foot of his grave, and I told him, you know, as I was looking down at his gravesite, I'm like, dude, I'm gonna find a way to beat this thing. Yeah, I'm gonna find a way to live forward and to stay sober. Well, that's not exactly what ended up happening then. Just wasn't in the cards for me. But then there's like kind of the relative loss, or like the metaphorical losses. You ever lose a relationship? Say a girl that walks away. That was my story. Fell in love with this girl, couldn't be honest with her, and she walked away and stayed away, and good on her. But man, it shattered my heart to a million pieces. And how I honored that, and how it's, you know, part of it's kind of an amends, is realizing what my wrongs were and not repeating those mistakes. I do that in my current relationship with my current girlfriend. You know, there's honesty, open communication, a willingness and a tolerance, and I do that with as many people as possible.
Yeah, you're the first person to bring up the loss and you know, not death. Not all loss is death. That's a very unique answer. I appreciate you
Right.
sharing that. I do want to read this post from today
Sure.
to kind of set the stage on, because I think, like I said, I saw this today and I was like, yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. So you posted two pictures of you. One, I don't really know where you're at. I guess, was that checking yourself into rehab?
That's correct. Yeah. Warrior's
Yep.
heart.
And then you look obviously much better in the second picture here. And the caption was before left,
Thank you.
12/9/2020, hopelessly addicted, pathetic, and wanting nothing to do with life. I checked into rehab for the fourth time. I had never felt a loneliness as I had during that time. It was indescribably horrible in every way possible. There are no words for it. After the right, which is the second picture, what a difference a year can make. The people I have met, the situations I have had the opportunity to experience, the loves in my life, God's grace in action. This year I got to experience so many wonderful things. Hiked 14ers, completed in jiu-jitsu competitions, swam the Hudson River with over 100 SEALs for charity, participated in Climb For's first ever veterans retreat, joined fellow frogmen in supporting a terrific cause, finished my master's degree in psychology, went salsa dancing with a beautiful woman, made new friends, helped new people, and even more. There are no words for it, only gratitude. What does God have in store for me next and for you? Let's find out. So I love that post. I think it kind of sets the stage briefly, a kind of a real quick summary, right, of what you've gone through here in the last year. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? Obviously here in Arlington is what it sounds like. What was your family like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and you know, the context at the time was, you know, my mom, my dad were still together, obviously, and I've got an older sister. She's 11 months older, so Irish twins, and man, like, you know, my parents split at a very young age, and my concept of my dad was I never really liked my dad. My really one of my few memories of my parents being together was my mom on the phone crying about something and my dad kind of aloof and disconnected in the back room. So I automatically made that connection at, you know, 4 or 5 years old, that my dad was the bad guy, my mom was the victim in this case. And
Right.
I was a mama's boy, no two ways about it. And my mom got full custody. My sister and me and myself, we moved to Arlington, Texas. So started school in Arlington, Texas, and man, like, I just remember being happy for a while. I made friends very quickly. I played football. I was a running back. They called me Moose. I'm not sure why. I just like get the ball and just pummel through like a whole linebacker, like whatever, 60-pound kids, right?
Right.
At the time before testosterone hits, and it's all relative. But I didn't care. It's Texas, so they throw pads and a helmet on you at 8 years old, and man, I just loved it, man. I had a friend group and everything, and a few years later, I kind of got complacent. I got lazy, and I gained a bunch of weight. So what happened from there is my same friend group that I had at the time, they turned on me. If it was like Friday and we're hanging out and we're having a good time, Monday it's like first day of junior high school, and I'm getting called a bunch of names. You can imagine the names, but lard this, fat this, big bone. Like South Park had just come out, so there's a bunch of Cartman references.
Yeah.
And man, like that was the first time that I remember feeling just so self-conscious, and begin to honestly just kind of hate myself. And I felt this screw turning in my chest of anxiety. I felt this sinking feeling of depression, and I just, for the first time, like I cried just uncontrollably at night. Like I didn't understand what was going on. And kind of the quick down and dirty is what resulted from that was I started to isolate. I wasn't like wasn't dating anybody, junior high and into high school, and I just it got so bad, and I got so sick and tired of getting made fun of is I figured out on my own how to diet, exercise, and lose weight. And by diet and exercise, I just ate less, and I started walking around the neighborhood at night.
How overweight are we talking about?
Dude, so let me think. I was 12 years old and like 140 pounds or something like that. I'm
Wow.
36 years old and 160 right around now.
Right. Right.
I'm like 6 inches, 7 inches shorter and comparable weight, man. Like I got taunted constantly, and got sick and tired of it. With enough pain, I'm convinced that we can do anything. It's pain is a relative kind of reflector, right? So with the pain of being made fun of, what was so much that the pain of doing something about it was relatively less. So I started doing something about it, and for whatever reason, I found out then, very quickly, that I had an ability to set a goal, set series of goals, ranked goals, and achieve them. First it was pounds on the scale, and then it was, who knows what else, but really just pounds on a scale. I took an honest assessment of where I was at, and then I started doing things about it. And man, like very quickly, I lost maybe 30 or 40 pounds within a few months. And man, I turned everything around. Started getting attention from girls. My friends started treating me with respect. And the unintended consequence from that was, just like kind of vanity. I was always looking in the mirror, very self-conscious, and an eating, what would become and develop later on to be an eating disorder. I was always hyper aware of what I look like, if people like me. It was all just fear-based, and why wouldn't it be? I was in a situation where my entire perspective and outlook on the world in my life was predicated entirely on how other people treated me. But the problem of losing weight with these crash diets for me is I couldn't keep the weight off. It's like holding your breath. Eventually you're gonna let loose and gasp for air. So I let loose and gasped for pizza and cookies and whatever. I didn't establish healthy habits. Gained all the weight back, and then all the taunts and jeers came back. The girls went away. all the making fun of came back, and dude, it was just right back to square one. And I was lonely, ostracized, hungry for approval, and got in with the wrong crowd. And it's in the States, in Colorado especially now, it's people, you smoke weed or whatever as long as you're of age and it's a certain amount. Texas will probably never adopt that, at least not fully as a
Not
state.
for a while.
Maybe some
Right.
counties have it now, but right, exactly. But back in 2002, when I was 17 years old, that's the crowd I hung out with. And I never liked the stuff. I just wanted a friend group. And, we just did a bunch of stupid stuff, and, 17 with it was bad. It was really dumb. And I knew, like, I didn't really want to hang out with this crew, but with low enough self-esteem and just enough approval, I allowed myself to stay in these situations. Long story short, 17 years old, I got arrested. Arrested for possession of marijuana. I was driving. My mom had gone to sleep. I had taken her car because she had a better car than I had, and picked up my friends. And next thing you know, I'm in jail. So that was my family dynamic. My dad wasn't in the picture. Almost never was. My mom, she was an alcoholic. She is an alcoholic. She's sober now, but she had her problems back then, and there was some mental and emotional abuse from her. And then next thing you know, I'm in jail, and that was just a rude awakening for me to go from I'm new to Texas. I'm living in Arlington. I've got this great friend group, and next thing you know, like a few years later, I'm in jail, and I've got all these other kind of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and it just, man, it floored me. Getting out of jail, I just felt horrible. I felt like the biggest loser on the planet, that I wasn't going to amount for anything. And my dad drove in from Arkansas and picked me up from jail, and he brought me back to Arkansas and just put a sledgehammer in my hands. And my punishment, of course, for being in jail was just swinging a sledgehammer with his friend who had a construction company. On the days that it rained, I'd stay inside, and I had to look up legal jargon about paraphernalia charges, marijuana charges in Texas. And it was just horrible. I was miserable, and I didn't eat anything. I starved myself. Again, like kind of that's the manifestation of the eating disorder. Just a way to control my anxiety and try to fit in with society. Long story short, my dad ends up letting me go back to Texas. You could see that I was miserable, and he just wanted me to not hang out with the wrong crowd again. And I was scared straight for a while, man. Like I didn't touch anything, from 17 for a while. I stayed away from it. And kind of the next big event for me was 19 years old. I was in college, and man, I just, the depression, anxiety would not leave me. I was miserable, just miserable, miserable, miserable. And my friends came over and partied. My mom was in rehab, and when they left, I drank whatever booze was left in the house, and I took a bunch of pills, and I tried to kill myself. I just wanted to die. It ended up not working. I didn't have to get rushed to the emergency room. Nobody was around. But I woke up from that, and the thought that I had in my mind is like, I got it. Nothing can possibly be this bad. It was a rock bottom for me. Like, I can't believe that I actually tried to take my own life. And from there, I made a very simple decision that I got to do something to deal with this fear, this anxiety, this depression. If running away from it is what got me to suicide, then now I got to start confronting it. Now I've got to start stepping into it for a more impossible task at the time. Summiting Everest without oxygen would have been easier than what I thought I was getting into. But little by little, I started confronting fears, the fear of failure, everything, man. Talking to girls, performing well at school, my grades got better. And I'm little by little like accepting these challenges. Yeah, I'm getting in the gym, I'm running more, I'm working out, and I always saw the movies as a kid. I remember Tears of the Sun, and I remember Black Hawk Down. And there's a clear distinction in Black Hawk Down between the Rangers with like the high and uncomfortable haircuts and the Delta Force guys, that they were like running around in helos and, shooting targets from, flying by. They had like the guy with the beard and the Oakleys on. Everyone had Oakleys at the time.
Right.
I was like, man, those guys are just so cool, man. And some part of me just knew I could never do that. I was like, it's beyond anything that I'm capable of. But that seed had been planted. And then one day, again, I didn't hang out with any of the bad crew. And I had a really rigorous workout schedule. I was working full time and going to school full time. And man, I'll never forget. I went to Barnes and Noble all the time, and I just loved reading. I loved reading self-help books. I loved reading fiction books, nonfiction books. I mean, you name it, but especially like the self-help section, the autobiographies. And then one day I'm walking by, and my eyes glance over, and I see a military history book called Inside Delta Force. And man, I read that book, and it changed a lot for me. one of the things they mentioned in the book is the guys that make it through these programs, they're kind of like endurance athletes. So I changed everything. I became an endurance athlete, started running marathons, eventually would get into ultra marathons, started looking at triathlons. And my whole time, and I'm finishing up my bachelor's in psychology, I'm thinking to myself, like, am I really going to do this thing? Like, am I really going to go into the military? Man, like, I wanted a purposeful life. I wanted something, and I didn't know if it was service oriented, but I got a service heart. You know, all things aside, like, there's part of me that always wants to give back and pay it forward. And I if I knew I was going to go into the military, I knew I was going to pick something difficult. And special forces sounded good, man. Like, it's cool, it's badass, you know, special. And I never felt special my whole life. And man, I'll never forget, one day I go back into Barnes and Noble, my only friend at the time, and I see this book with this huge, beautiful trident on it, and the title was Lone Survivor. And I don't know if anybody um, picked up that book and didn't put it down without damn near completing it. But dude, I was hooked right then and there. If I'm gonna go special forces and do this thing, I'm gonna do that one because it's the hardest one. It has the most mythos around it, and it seems to have. They've all got their hero. This is my interpretation at the time, but it seemed the most heroic to me, and I kind of romanticized the
Right.
idea. And dude, I was, how old was I? I was 22 at the time. I had overcome a ton of fears. I'd
What year
stepped
was
into a
this?
lot of 22. That was 2007.
Okay. I was gonna say so.
Yeah,
Okay. And so you joined the teams, I guess the Navy. You were looking at SF, looking at reading Delta books. What drew you to the Navy? Just Lone
yeah,
Survivor, and you read the book and figured this is the community for me.
that's it, man. You know, I narrowed down military service to special forces, and I still had all four branches to look at or whatever. Um, and I read up on buds, and it was the hardest one. It was the longest one, a 5-day hell week, 6 months of just selection phase. I mean, just, it intimidated me even reading about it. You know, like, I'd see like the making of class 2, 3, 4 or whatever on the Discovery Channel, and man, my heart rate would rise, my blood pressure would rise. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, who
Yeah.
does this? Like, who can actually make it through? These guys are insane to me. And but you know, it's like, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do the hardest one, you know, the most impossible one. So that was 2007. I think the book came out around 2005, 2006, if I remember correctly. So it might have been in paperback by that point. And I go to the recruiter's office. I say I want to be a SEAL. They literally laugh in my face. They probably heard a lot of dudes say that, right?
Yeah.
And you go and you take the PST, physical screening test. Because of my training, I blew it out of the water. They were blown away by it, like, oh my gosh, like, somebody wants to be a SEAL and actually performs to the standards. And then I get a call one day from the recruiter, and it's very short. He goes, hey, you got to come in, click. I was like, well, what's this about? He pulls me into the office, and he goes, hey man, why don't you tell me about this marijuana charge? Now, I hadn't mentioned anything about it, right? Because I was 17 when that happened, and I thought, well, who cares? We'd gone to court, the charges got dropped. I figured it would completely got expunged. Well, I was wrong. You know, getting charges dropped and getting expunged are two separate things. And I admitted my guilt. You know, I was like, dude, I got arrested. I didn't know there'd be a record. And they kind of browbeat me and guilted me for but I felt horrible, man. You know, I didn't want to be a liar, and I got caught in a lie pretty much. So I said, what do I do? And he says, well, you can't be a SEAL. You can't go in under the SEAL challenge contract. What you can do is either try another branch. They'll probably say the same things to you about being special forces. He said, or you can go into the Navy and you can do some time, you know, keep on your best behavior, and
Oh
maybe
man.
you can transition and go to training. I said, well, how long are we talking about? And you got to be in a couple of years before they'll even take a look at you. So I said yes, right then and there. One of the overarching themes in my life at that point is how do you know how much you want something is by how much you're willing to give up to get it. And dude, I was willing to go into whatever job they gave me. It didn't matter to me, and to put up with it. You know, that's the word that I gave. We talked about honor, and I wanted to honor that commitment. And what's funny is, dude, I could have walked out of that office that day, and you and I wouldn't be talking today. You know,
Right.
like, it's just, nobody would have known, but I would have known, right? Like, we always know when we give up a little bit,
Did
and I would have known. That would have been.
did you go undesignated to the fleet?
No, they kind of hooked it up a little bit. He drew a clear distinction between the black shoe navy, which is the boats, and the brown shoe navy, which is aviation. So he gave me a job. It's aviation electronics technician. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So at least you
So
weren't like on a ship, chip and paint for 2 years, but still, I think
no.
there's a lot to unpack there, right? So childhood, man, just which you don't hear a lot of guys talk about that, And I was just listening to a podcast the other day with DJ Shipley, and he was
Yeah.
on Sean
Okay.
Ryan's show, and he was talking about how they went and did Ibogaine, and a bunch of team guys were there,
sure.
right? And they were talking about how a lot of these team guys were talking about stuff that happened in their childhood, and that was a lot of the issues, unresolved issues from growing up. You don't hear guys talk about that, especially in the teams, right? There's not a lot of weakness that's openly promoted, and let's talk about our feelings today. And I like that we're talking about this. I think it's important. I think there has been a shift. I think people are starting to realize it's important.
Yeah. Well, that's, it's time and place. Yeah. At the teams, we don't sit around and talk about feelings. It just doesn't come up. And it's funny you mentioned Ibogaine, and we'll get into that later, but I've done Ibogaine 3 times. Done a lot of other things and trying to get sober. And yeah, like we'll touch on that here in a minute.
Okay.
It's interesting you bring that up. Yeah. We never make any room available to talk about childhood. You get close to guys, in the teams, and it's brotherhood for a reason, not just because it's a bunch of dudes, but like you actually get like it's really good guys that are there, right? Like you get the sandbaggers too. That you get that in every organization, but there's some people where you just have a lot in common. You open up to them, you spend a lot of time together. I mean, sometimes the barriers come down and you just talk about, especially if you're going through stuff. Like I was going through a divorce in the teams. I was starting to go through drinking heavily in the teams, and then what became addiction in the teams. Like, dude, like I just had some serious issues, and I just didn't quite have the comfort of opening up about it yet, based on the policy and the commands and in the Navy, which is zero tolerance.
That too, yeah.
But yeah. Absolutely.
So
but to kind of
go ahead. I was just gonna say you did 2 years in the regular Navy. At what point were you able to get orders to go to Buds, and what Buds class did you go to?
Yeah, so it was 2010, and I was at my first command for about a year. That they do a thing called a change of command every once in a while at the command. So your CO comes in, and I think they're there like 2 or 3 years or something. They do a change of command, and then a new CO comes on board. Well, the old CO didn't care that I wanted to go to Buds. He's like, whatever, dude. Like, you're here at the command, you got to put your time in here. I'm like, yes, sir. The new CO wanted to see people go for special programs, and I was the only one. I was one of 2 guys at that command that wanted to be a SEAL. So he literally comes in one day. He goes, "Petty Officer Hardin, when am I going to see an application across my desk or a request shit?" I said, "I'm working on it, sir." So long story short, put in a request in 2010, and it got approved. So they actually pulled me off the boat. I went on deployment on the boat. They pulled me off the boat to come back to the States to fulfill those orders. Buds class 287 is what I started with. My proctor, my first phase proctor was Eddie Gallagher. He's got a book out, Man in the Arena. I ran into Eddie recently at a charity function for Uncommon Grit. And Eddie's great, man. Total savage. Fucking love that guy. He beat the living hell out of us. It's one of those like classes where you finish Hell Week and the other instructors are like shaking your hand, like, dude, you guys had a legit Hell Week, like legit. So I have like a little bit of pride about that. Like, I told that to Eddie. I was like, dude, I was in 287. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Don't be." It was a beautiful moment for me. But yeah, dude, I couldn't believe it. Like I'd spent 4 years, wanting to be a SEAL and training for it, and just dude, that wasn't the only time I requested to go to Buds either. I requested it multiple times, and every time it's like, nope, 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 nope. I thought, man, like this thing's never going to happen. And then suddenly it happened. So, for people listening, especially if it's young people, you don't ever give up. If you think you want something, even if you're scared, keep going for it till you get it. Like you'll figure it out along the way. But yeah, don't ever give up. So I get accepted. I go to Great Lakes for pre-Buds. That's a couple of months long. And oh man, what was it? January, I'm at Coronado Island. There's 150 of us showing up for class 287. They normally class up 100. I don't know why. We were one of like the last like super classes that came through, and we had 150 dudes. And 3 weeks later, we're Hell Week was the fourth week for my class, and we started buds February 14th, Valentine's Day, and 3 weeks later we were 92 guys. After Hell Week we were down to 47 guys.
Winter Hell
So
Week.
we went to 100. Yeah, yep, there you go. We went to 150 to 47. I think of those, the number that made it through to graduation without any rollbacks was like 30 to 35. So dude, the statistic holds up about 20% success rate kind of throughout.
Did you have any problems? Did you go straight through with 287?
Not straight through. I made it through Hell Week with 287, and dude, I just was injured and freaking exhausted, and I what did I do? Pull comp. That's what got me. So get flipped ass over tea kettle over and over again, and I always felt calm under the water, but for some reason I would mistake the knots for something else, or I'd do the wrong sequence. I wouldn't do the right emergency procedures, but pull comp tripped me up. That felt like pretty big failure. Everything was going pretty smoothly. I was feeling pretty good about myself.
Can we jump into that for a second?
Threw me up.
So, for the listeners, pull comp is open circuit diving, and the instructors basically mess with the students underwater, tie knots and hoses. They do surf hits, and it's one of the bigger attrition evolutions. But I want to talk kind of about your mindset there, because obviously you're confident. You just made it through first phase, and this is your dream. And I don't know how many tries, attempts they were given guys then, but you go on your first attempt, pull comp, fail. I don't know, maybe second attempt, fail. What's going on in your mind then? Are you freaking out internally? Are you starting to doubt? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It's with any one of these tests, you never really know what you're getting into until you get in there. And like I said, I'd hit the cold water in the combat, the little swimming pool, the 15-foot area. And man, I'd feel okay. I'm like, okay, we went over the emergency procedures. They leave out these balsa wood tanks at the end of the day if guys wanted to stick around and practice. I think I stuck around and practiced like one time. It's two different things, once you're under the water and once you're doing it on your own. So the quality of the repetitions that guys do, and this is for jiu-jitsu, this is for everything. The time put in and the repetitions is really what helps develop that skill set and as real conditions as possible. So I'd feel calm. They'd fail me. I'd be like, okay, that's interesting, but kind of knew what to expect. Second time in, I don't know, remember even what it was, but they'd fail me. I'd be like, okay, like, I don't remember what I felt. I just remember knowing I had 2 more attempts. We had 4 attempts, total, the first time through. And the third attempt, I made it a little bit further than the previous 2 attempts. And I felt excited. I'm like, I know I can do this thing. I'm seeing the guys that are passing. And I'm like, dude, if they can do this thing, I can do this thing. And, there's definitely fear, was the final attempt. And that's when I started to feel more anxious than just excited. And I was like, okay, like I really have to make this one count. And man, it was a total just kind of snafu. Sometimes what they do is when they're gonna come give you that hit, they put their hand in front of your mask and you're supposed to really quick. And for some reason, like I wanted to get like a fresh breath, so I blew out before I inhaled, and he ripped the mask out right as I was exhaling. So I ended up like, needing help, or given a hand and arm signal, and and then they failed me and brought me up. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because it gave me between 287 and when I classed back up in 288, it gave me a month off. And during that month, I got to rest. This balance thing we talk about. Well, you can't really balance in buds. It's impossible, right? Like balance logs, right? Notwithstanding, you can't really kind of throttle back. And that let me heal up. That gave me some time to work on the O course, because I was struggling with the O course. Like I'd almost failed the swims, almost failed the O course, but I was really good at running. So I finally heal up and I get back with class 288. And man, like I'm soaring through things. I'm like the top 3 runner, number 1 in the O course, back of the pack of the swim. I was horrible at swimming. And it came time again for pull comp. So this time I did something differently. I practiced with the balsa wood tanks just for as long as it took. Didn't matter. Just rep after rep after rep. First time in the pool, failed. Almost made it to the end. But then he fails me. And I was like, dude, I don't know what to do anymore. I practiced as much as I could. And it was a really interesting thing. Like I didn't relax, but I kind of stopped caring so much. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've done as much as I possibly can. Jump back in the pool, attempt number 6 now, and for some reason passed, and didn't have any more struggles really with the rest of the training after that.
How did the instructors treat you when you were failing? Like you started, you obviously weren't the gray man anymore, right? Class back up, and everyone knew your name. They knew that you had dropped, or not dropped, but got rolled back. Did you notice a change in how you were treated by the instructor, cadre?
No, not really. You know, it's with like from in the individual evolution from one iteration to the next, they just have guys to run through. They're not giving you any particular extra attention for that evolution. But you know, the way they deal with any failures, they pull you aside and they beat you down even more. I didn't get any special treatment. I didn't get treated any better just because I was a top performer. Most of the instructors by then, some of the instructors themselves had failed pull comp. I mean,
Right.
they didn't tell us that. They didn't give us any like words of encouragement or anything. They wanted to intimidate us. They wanted to scare us, and they did a very good job of it, at least in my opinion. Like I'd never felt that kind of relief before. And again, like we keep going for things, and even in failure, like I told you earlier, I had that 5th jiu-jitsu competition. I lost both of my matches. Well, dude, I don't just give up on jiu-jitsu because of that, right? Like we just keep moving forward, and that's where some of the lessons can really be learned. So from there, you know, the next big hurdle is 3rd phase. There's land nav. That gave me some problems, but I pushed through it and passed. And then there's SQT. SQT is a little bit more advanced training. You pick up on stuff there that you just don't cover in buds. Buds is just one big selection process. Selection criteria that they teach you a little bit how to shoot, like just enough to get expert marksman, and then they move you on. You know, with SQT, you go into, you know, a little bit bigger boy stuff. You're doing land warfare, you're doing MAROP stuff, you're doing combat swimmer. That was a huge one for SQT. Close quarters combat, there's another huge hurdle for guys. Fewer guys get dropped in SQT, but it still does happen. It's mostly for safety. So land warfare and CQC especially, it's for safety violations. April 27th, 2012, got pinned and was sent to SEAL Team 3. And I was 27 at the time. So I was 22 when I first went into the recruiter's office, and then 5 years later, you know, I finally made it to the team. So it was like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 years culmination of really wanting it, sticking with it, and moving forward with it, and dealing with all the adversity and failures.
So you go to SEAL Team 3. Were you an older new guy then? I mean,
Yeah. Interesting question. I was. I mean, we all showed up as, I think everyone was an E4 by the time they got there. I think I very quickly moved up to an E5. I was an E4 when it came to buds, so I was automatically like a boat team leader, boat crew leader, or whatever. We all made E5 pretty quickly. You really just put your name on the exam and fill it out, because it's based on like the prospective number of people that'll be in your rate in the future. Well, they always need SEALs, so E4, they always need E5 SEALs. So E5, you make E5 really quickly. And then, man, like as a new guy, I just had like a really simple attitude of just working really hard.
was this during the SO contract? So you were an SO at this point, had your own rating?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. They just turned everything to the SEAL rating. Before it's just a warfare qualification.
So you check in with SEAL Team 3, and then I imagine work up to deploy. Where'd you go on your first deployment?
Yeah, so first deployment, we went to Djibouti. We were a West Coast team that did like an East Coast kind of deployment. East Coast typically covers down on Africa. We had some kind of hookup, and we were supporting Strike Force, SEAL Team 6 in the area. And I won't go too much into detail about all that stuff, but long story short, you know, Horn of Africa and then kind of around that area was the first AO.
Anything significant or defining in that first deployment that you can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't go into details on where and when, but our first mission ever, we were tasked with, grabbing American citizens from an embassy, and we had really shitty intel, and we came in and we got fired upon immediately on infill, and we took a few casualties. The first craft got, four or five guys got shot. Nobody ended up dying, but a few people that I work with and come to know over the last couple of years shot. One guy was bleeding out pretty bad. One guy got shot in the back. Yeah, it was eye opening to be certain, and we just didn't expect that coming in. It's yeah, I can't really go too much into the details about it. But we got
Yeah,
out of there really quickly. We didn't get to finish anything that we had set out to accomplish, and we exchanged our wounded, regrouped, and then we stood down, and we just went back to the other intention for us being there, which we were the quick reaction force for SEAL Team 6 and the stuff that they were doing.
right. You got back from that first deployment, and obviously alcohol is a pretty big thing in the teams. How much were you drinking at this point, and was it a problem at this point? Did anyone notice a change in you, behaviorally or with alcohol? Any substance problems then?
Dude, nothing, man. And I'll be honest with you about a few things here, because just part of my story is I was still married at the time, and my wife had a prescription for Adderall. And dude, Adderall, like a new guy on the teams, I wanted to work hard. I wanted to be seen working hard, and I wanted to do a good job. And I did that. And taking Adderall definitely helped me focus. It calmed me down. I had this problem of when I was at work, I was thinking about home. When I'm home, I'm thinking about work. So Adderall has allowed me to be where I'm at, be who I am, where I'm at in that situation. So at home, I'm a good husband. At work, I'm a good worker. And man, I just worked really hard. And but that one put a hook in me pretty early on, and it wasn't problematic, dude. None of this stuff was problematic for quite some time. And I'm drinking a little bit. I would just drink with my wife like once a week on the weekends, and then we ended up we just never should have gotten married. And she left. She leaves, takes the dog with her. That was part of the plan.
Why did she leave?
Sent her back, and
Was it just the work-life balance, or was it because of the Adderall? Or
no, she didn't. So I was starting to steal her Adderall. She didn't know that I was taking her Adderall. I got a prescription in the Navy. I lied. I made it seem like I needed Adderall, and long story short, they ended up giving me a prescription for it. And she didn't know anything about that. But what it came down to, dude, we fought all the time. And coming back from that deployment, dude, something was just different. I don't know if it was like the workup and the constant going and living out of a bag most of the year, and the combination of that and just not wanting to be with her. Like we never should have got married. We rushed into it. We were fighting all the time. She needed a lot more out of me than I knew how to give at that time. There was too much going on with me, and wanting to pursue this new lot in life that I couldn't be there for. So I just had a lot of kind of unchecked issues going on, and I didn't really know how to deal with them effectively. So at first it was just drinking, and yeah, a little bit of Adderall, but whatever. I had a prescription, and I was running through it pretty quickly, and it was becoming problematic, but it never interfered with work. And
right.
that's the most salient thing in my life at that point is, dude, I got voted number one new guy, my first platoon. My second platoon, junior sailor of the quarter. I was a number one E5 at SEAL Team 3. Got early promote to E6. I was a JTAC, so I called in airstrikes and helicopter landing zones and other stuff. I got promoted to JTAC program manager. There's only one of those at a team. So, dude, I was just like doing really, really well for myself. And yeah, man, just there was something about coming back from that deployment where something was different. Like, I don't know. It's hard to put into words. I don't think it was like PTSD necessarily. It's a perspective shift. Like when you've gone overseas and have been ready to do a job, like coming back, there's no normal coming back anymore. It's something like shifts. So long story short, the effects of that, drinking more, starting to get into, an amphetamine, a stimulant, my sleep's all jacked up. My mood's obviously going to change. And, now we're gearing up for a second deployment, and I've got a good reputation. So I kind of was able to get away with a little bit more before people started noticing anything.
Was this during the like Ambien years too? Were you taking Ambien as well?
Yeah. So that would come into play. So my second deployment, pretty much anticlimactic. We went to Guam. Well, I got to do some cool stuff. I got to train with the New Zealand SAS. Those guys are amazing. I got to train with the South Korean SEALs. South Korea is really cool. Got to coordinate a JTAC program for them with the help of a MARSOC raider. There was also a really good JTAC. But something I was doing not only while I was there, but when I came back was, dude, I just started experimenting more. A buddy of mine had a girlfriend that was from New Zealand. Picked her up while I was there, and she had access to drugs. And I don't think those guys get tested, and we didn't either at the time. So started doing some party stuff, on top of drinking. It's easier to make those decisions when you're drunk. Started getting into cocaine, and when I got back from deployment, I wanted to take a little bit extra time off to again balance things out. I took a month off, went to my cousin's wedding, but more importantly, as it relates to this story, is I started getting heavier into drugs. I wanted Adderall, but I'd run out of it very quickly. So I started looking up various ways to get stimulants. And I won't go too into detail about what I did and how I got it, but I found out a way to get multiple dealers for cocaine. I found out a way to get basically like analogs to amphetamine, like similar enough that were legal to buy online at the time. And I continued to I didn't realize it, but started prioritizing that over wanting to go to work. And that was the beginning of my addiction. Drinking is what it began with. I was drinking now every day, definitely doubling down on the weekends. And with drinking, I did amphetamines so that I could stay drunk longer and just not get too drunk. And they make me feel good also.
I want to rewind just a little bit back to that Africa deployment. One of the things I talked about here is just how it seems like the cool thing to do now, especially like if you're young and in college, is just to bitch about how like terrible we have it here in America. It's like the cool thing to do.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some
Yeah.
of the stuff you saw in Africa? Maybe some things you're grateful for looking back. Maybe describe the conditions for the listener of what you saw and how we really don't have much to bitch about, here in the States.
Yeah. Man, there's not much. There's a lot of goats, a lot of trash, and they burn their trash and their feces at night. And I mean, these people live in a squalor. It's just like a combination of like a trash kind of brick or mud hut at best. Somebody on base working at the necks or whatever the case may be. And not to mention, the diseases that are going around, the malaria that gets passed around, if you get sick. And we didn't spend too much time interacting with people, but dude, we would drive out to go to a range. We'd leave the wire and go to a shooting range. Makes no sense whatsoever, but that was my leadership at the time. Kids would run up to the car. Dude, we would throw food out of the car, and these kids would like maul each other to get like a thing of like stale crackers, right? Like it's insane. Um, those are the conditions they lived in. There's no Starbucks there. There's no safe spaces there. They're not voting on anything there. Yeah, it's easy. Go to Djibouti, Africa, go to Africa and hang out there for a week. And yeah, like we grow up in this very convenient society, dude, like I'm looking around, there's a Taco Bell, I'm right in a church, there's internet, we're talking, there's air conditioning. It's incredible the concentration of and availability of comfort items that we have here in America. But that also kind of lends itself, and this is a whole nother discussion, to isolation, to what's the word I'm looking for? Complacency. When you're surrounded by comfort, we kind of miss the lessons we learned from discomfort. And maybe that's why people want to go to the gym and do jujitsu. Maybe that's why people want to do Tough Mudders and hike mountains and stuff, because too much comfort is actually uncomfortable. So for the people that complain and moan and bitch, yeah, it's just ignorance, man. They don't know any better. They haven't traveled out or really experienced much hardship, or they forgot.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's too much comfort is not a good thing. And I think the earlier the people who you see that are really successful at, in my opinion, are the people who put themselves in uncomfortable situations, who seek discomfort and who challenge themselves. That's the only way to really grow. And to kind of talk more, I guess, about the whole gratitude thing. I think people, the opportunity as well. There's people want to say there's not any opportunity in America anymore, and I think that's bullshit. Those kids in Africa, that's what no opportunity looks like. I mean, that's like the definition of no options. No, I don't know what they do. What do you think most of those kids grow up and do for work?
I mean, dude, I don't know, man. I think they just kind of learn to subsist on what's immediately available. Um, every once in a while, I'm sure there's someone that mentions something about education, or they see something that wherever you grow up in, you tend to notice differences in lifestyles and differences in people. And if you're lucky enough to have, just like broad discrepancies with people that are willing to kind of reach back and reach down, then there can be some growth there. But honestly, the majority of them probably do what their parents are doing, probably don't move around or really like go for anything. That's just not, it's not in their culture to necessarily do so. Who knows, man? Work at the local market, sell some, personal made items.
Yeah,
Not a whole lot, not a whole lot of the opportunity. Definitely, like you said, the opportunities that we have here,
right.
potential that anyone here has, that's well outside the reach of anyone there in a country like
And,
that.
and terrorism is obviously on the rise in Africa and in the Horn, and that's another option that those kids unfortunately probably are going to get drawn to at some point, is being involved in those organizations or just criminal organizations as well. So you had your second deployment to Guam. You're getting more into drugs. Is this I guess you probably have to be careful here, but do guys that you're serving with, do they know that you're doing this? Are they doing it with you? Or is that kind of the culture, or is this kind of a secret you're keeping from the teams?
Definitely not the culture. Definitely a secret I'm keeping. Drinking is the culture, man. You can get obliterated. We call it bonding. After working with pilots, we get drunk and we debrief, and it's just kind of a way to decompress, right? It's definitely not part of the culture. If anyone, I think there was like a CBS news release. These guys came out in like 2018 and 2016 or
I
17,
was just thinking
and they
about
had the
that.
like black.
Just
Exactly.
thinking
Like
about it.
their faces
Yep.
are all blacked out. You can't see them. They're like, the command turns a blind eye to it. I disagree with that. What happened in my case? So to answer your question, yeah, I mean, like there's some guys that were like my friends that knew. One of them, because dude, I started to realize it was getting out of control. I'm like, dude, my good buddy, I won't mention his name. He's still active duty. Man, it's one of the people you end up screwing over that you just don't intend to. And I'll get to that here in a minute. He's a really good friend of mine. We started hanging out. He's an older guy that took me under his wing, and I just won his respect. I won all my older guys' respect. I was talking to him one day. I was like, "Hey, man, dude, I've spent over $1,000 in cocaine this month." And dude, I kid you not, he literally starts tearing up. Like this guy is just like he's a family man, a father now, great husband at the time, and just a terrific team guy. And he starts tearing up. He's like, "Well, is it because your wife left and this and that?" I'm like, I don't fully understand. I don't know. And I told him what I thought was the truth at the time, because I honestly believed it. I said, dude, it was getting out of hand, but I think I've got it under control. And I honestly meant that, and I believe that. Now, now let's talk about Navy zero tolerance. I think it's a well-intentioned policy that says if you have a problem and whether you admit to having a problem or get caught, if it's drugs that you're not prescribed, you're gone. Administrative separation. It does not matter. Why that can be problematic, in my opinion, is if you start to have a problem and you realize you have a problem, then how do you get help without sacrificing your career? So that was a conundrum I was in. Dude, I knew what zero tolerance it was, when I was doing everything right. I just never thought it would apply to me. And then one day I literally am just like, I can't stop. And it told my buddy I was spending a lot of money on cocaine. So as the story kind of progresses, is the more I'm using drugs, the less I'm able to suit up and show up. Dude, I was always the guy. I'm there like 30 minutes to an hour early. I'm staying late. I'm extra careful and assiduous on my duties and responsibilities. I took it very, very seriously. and I start doing drugs, and dude, now I start showing up late. I'm missing equipment. It's just, and it's
Yeah.
embarrassing. What ended up happening, man, was I did all drugs, man. I was doing steroids. Um, so the concept of having a needle in my arm wasn't new to me. And then one day I score some cocaine, I go back home, and I kind of like am looking at the cocaine and like the needle, and I injected cocaine for the first time in August of 2016. And man, that was a game changer. I don't know how it got to that point. It just progressed, and that's where I was in that moment. And then one day, not too long after that, I meet one of the shady drug dealers, and they sell me what I didn't know. I thought it was cocaine, but it turned out to be methamphetamine. I took it home and I injected that, and I realized it was a totally different response. It just remarkably different. I can't even put words to it. And dude, I was already hooked, but then it was game over at that point, and I hadn't even realized it yet. Within a few months of injecting meth, um, I have a rude awakening. It's February of 2017, and I text my drug and alcohol coordinator. Yeah, you get two of these at each Navy command, and drug and alcohol program administrator, or whatever the case may be. Um, the realization I had was, I'm gonna get one of my guys killed. I'm never gonna live it down. And dude, we were doing CQC house runs, land warfare, and I was drunk and high. I would take breaks and go shoot up in the bathroom, and come back with live ammo within feet
That's
of my
insane.
buddies.
Yeah.
It is live explosive breaching rounds, everything, man. So I came forward, and I admitted to my entire command, I need help. There's no two ways about it. I couldn't handle the situation on my own. I knew I was powerless, and I had to do something about it. And long story short, they sent me to rehab, and then they kicked me out.
Is
So
this after Guam? Did you do any more workups, or did you go to a different position in the Navy?
now, yeah, we were. I stayed with most of the same guys. I was gearing up for my third platoon, and now as a fire team leader, primary JTAC, and we were getting ready to work up for another deployment. Um, Obviously, as soon as I raised the alarm, they immediately took me off
So you
the
did this
roster,
on
replaced me, and
workup. You came clean on workup.
yes,
Wow.
yep, absolutely, dude. I was using them workup, man. It's just, again, that wasn't the plan. So again, I'm this ambitious dude in 2010. I'm totally clean. I barely maybe drink a little bit on the weekends, if that, because I don't want to be sloppy. Get accepted to buds, make it to the big drinker at all whatsoever. A year and a half later, I'm putting a needle in my arm. What I found out very shortly after that. So what they do when in a situation like that is they just assume that you're suicidal. Somebody said I'd mentioned it, and I don't take that away from them. I don't blame them. So I had to spend a week in the psych ward. It was my first visit to the psych ward. And again, it wasn't my ambition coming in there, but that's just what it was. And I got a call one day, my second or third day there, and it was a call from my dad. My dad, my whole life, had been a straight laced lawyer, never touched anything. I think he admitted to smoking pot once or something like that as a teenager in the 70s. Well, I get him on the phone, and he admits to me that he was an addict. He had done everything that I'd done, injected this, that, and the other. And
Wow.
it took me a minute to like comprehend what he had said. I was like, well, hold on, is like, you? No way. He did all that, dude. I didn't realize that it was the genetic component is unmistakable. Obviously, you realize that in your bachelor study, the nature versus nurture. Dude, that nature component is huge. And man, like, all I had to do was take that drug just once, and it was done. I don't even know how far back I was done, but I was done. And and man, like, now I'm psych ward, and then I go to rehab. And I'll talk briefly on that because, man, I've wanted to be sober since 2017, and I wanted it more than anything. And I believed in my heart of hearts that I would never, ever, ever use again. And I lasted 4 months. 4 months, and then I'm using. What had happened, and I remember the day, and this isn't blaming, but it is like circumstantial, is I kept wanting to try and get back to my platoon. I kept wanting to try and go on deployment, even if I couldn't fire a weapon. Yeah, I'm like, I'll pour coffee, I'll make coffee, or make copies of papers, I'll take out the trash. I don't care. And one day the oncoming command master chief sat me down, and he said, "You're damaged goods and nobody wants you." And man, honestly,
Thanks.
I just kind of gave up after that. Yeah, appreciate it. What
Yeah.
do you mean by that? Dude, I immediately took that and just I gave up. I stopped trying. You know, when someone like that you look up to and respect tells you you're basically you start acting like one. That's what I did.
Did that mean that
So
no platoon would take you basically if you were going to go to a different, if you wanted to try a different platoon or just get back on active duty status?
it's what happened was the CEO wouldn't have signed off on it. I mean, there were guys that were. I mean, one of the guys in the fire cell wanted to take me. One of my friends was a LPO. He wanted to take me. So there were offers to they would take me under their wing. They, you
They
know,
help you.
they'd piss test me, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
But the CEO didn't want to take that responsibility. So I got discharged, dude. After 9 years in the military, and about 8 of those, 8.5 almost, were honestly like honest, flawless, never late, nothing. I got discharged with a general under honorable conditions. It doesn't sound it's like it's all that terrible, but if I'm not mistaken, you can't even get the GI Bill with a general
I mean,
under honorable.
anything
And
less than
there's
honorable, right? Anything less than honorable.
yeah,
You made
yeah.
me. You were. I thought about this when you were talking about the zero tolerance policy. It's like, and I know that's a lot of guys just anecdotally hearing about is like they're real. They're real chill about handing out pills, right? This hurts. Oh, here's some tramadol. Oh, this, I'm having trouble sleeping. Here's some Ambien. I'm having trouble focusing. Here's some Adderall. The Navy, what it sounds like, is really good about or bad about just giving out drugs. And these guys are on multiple prescribed drugs, but they still struggle with it, right? They have these substance problems, but then they don't support you or the guys when they need help. When you were discharged, how did the community treat you? Were you kind of shunned, or did you feel like the guys were like almost felt bad for you in a way, like, "No, man, we wish you could have stayed, but it is what it is." What was kind of the vibe you were getting from the guys?
Yeah. So a couple things, like the first part of your statement where the Navy's given a bunch of pills, that hasn't been my experience or what I've heard. The VA is really bad about over medicating dudes. Like, here's pills, 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 pills. Dude, in the Navy, I had to go through a lot of hoops just to get Adderall. Like, number one, they didn't want to give it. They start like with a low dose of whatever. So maybe you've heard experience of guys like that. That just hasn't been my experience.
Right.
But the second part of your question is, guys would text me and be like, "Dude, I miss you." It was hard for them too. Like, it was because they knew the me that was such a hard charger. They knew the me that was being honest and just did a good job. And then all of a sudden things went to shit very quickly. And the fact that I had come forward and asked for help, that set me in a whole different category. Typically guys, they get caught, right? They just, and I get it, dude. It's like, how do you come forward and be honest and sacrifice something you've worked so hard for? I didn't have the courage to do that for a long time, but I was given that realization that one day, and I had the courage to do so. So yeah, I think they had a bleeding heart for me, man. But the train rolls on, and they had to move on and do their own thing. I'm sure there's some guys that were self-righteous indignation, that I would never do that kind of thing, and good on them. I don't really care what they think. But some guys will reach up to me, like platoon chief type, senior chief type, even master chief types, and we're like, "Man, dude, good on you, man. You tried to make the best of your situation. We appreciate you being honest." Oh, another thing to point out is right after this master chief said, "You're damaged goods and nobody wants you." Another question they ask is, we're really glad you did what you did. How do we get more guys to do that? How do we get more guys to feel comfortable to come forward? I said, "You
Yeah,
never
not
will.
that.
You never will. Congratulations. You lost an op. If you treated me well and let me at least like stay in an ops position or
Right.
whatever, man, just give me a fighting chance, you maybe would do that." But as it stands, I don't know what it's looking like now as far as like the drug problem or whatever it is, but they're probably nobody's staying in. They're probably kicking every single one of them out, and God knows what that's doing for them. Maybe setting them back. It set me
What
back
year is
big time.
this? Is this 2018?
2017.
Okay, so this is before like
Yeah.
the Eddie Gallagher. It wasn't like they were dealing with that and dealing with these guys coming forward about, which it took a lot of courage. I think we need to highlight that. Like, I mean, you owned it. You went up to him, "Hey, I'm struggling," which I think probably 90% of people would never do, or maybe more. That took a
Yeah.
lot of courage.
It took a lot, man. It was definitely desperation and not wanting to kill one of my friends. Sure, some courage there, but I don't want to give too much credit to that. It was hard. It was one of the
Yeah,
hardest things I did. But yes, let's not completely overlook the courageous aspect of because I had a decision to make. I didn't have to say shit. I could have just kept going, or try to fix it on my own, or try to control it. And maybe the next day is when I squeeze the trigger and kill somebody, in a blue on blue. Which I just wouldn't. I don't know if I'd be able to live that down, man. I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? I had an exit strategy. It was I got accepted to a PhD program in a psychology school in San Diego. Couldn't stay sober. Pulled out of that. Tried to go back to rehab number 2. It was a really bad rehab. I didn't want some like young 22-year-old like telling me what to do. I was like, no, I'm good. So I left there. Next thing you know, I'm homeless, and I'm asking my family for help. So they sent me to a wonderful place called Warrior's Heart, and this is late 2017. So I went from teams to school to homeless very, very quickly. And dude, I get to Warrior's Heart, and you're surrounded by veterans and first responders. It's a beautiful place. It's here in the Hill Country. That's actually why I'm in Texas. Is I'm talking this Sunday, and they have an alumni meeting. And dude, like I just hit the ground running. I took everything very seriously. I had nothing but debt. I didn't even have disability yet. I hadn't gotten involved in the VA. I mean, nothing. I did not set myself up for success. Well, while I was there were a lot of people that had been through the VA process. They got me hooked up, went through all the physical assessments, and ended up getting 100% disability. So now I've got a paycheck coming in. I get a job cutting down trees. I'm staying sober. I'm working with other people. Like I'm really like my life is changing. And dude, at 7 months, I'm in sober living. It's 2018, and one of my friends brings stuff back to the ranch. He brought meth and he brought syringes, and I was gone like instantly. Like it just like a dog in heat. Like I just went straight to it. And man, that was 2018, and you and I are talking now, and it's 2021. It has taken me almost 5 years to hit 1 year. So that post I posted yesterday was my 1 year mark. And man, like I don't know really how dark you can talk about on this podcast.
Go as dark as
But
you want. Yeah, I mean,
dude, okay, well, let's just call it what it is, man. So I tried to fix the problem by getting out of the area. In recovery, we call it a geographical. The problem with that is wherever I go, there I am. So I got accepted to Pepperdine, the online program for psychology, and I put in a request to transfer to go on campus. They give you, I was able to qualify for the GI benefits because my first 4 years of service before I re-enlisted were considered honorable. So they went off of that discharge instead of the actual discharge. I don't know how that worked out. I think it's a God thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I get my school completely, totally paid for. And I get an E5 with BAH for the post 9/11 GI Bill. So for those guys listening, go to the military, use the GI Bill, get discharged honorably. And seriously, like, dude, Pepperdine, now that I have my degree, it was probably an $80,000 degree, and I don't owe a dime. I'm very grateful for the programs that this government and the people that have fought for our country previously have made available for service members. It really is a beautiful thing. But what wasn't beautiful was my life at the time. And I go to Irvine, California, and dude, I'm trying to get sober. I'm relapsing constantly. And this is just the truth, man. And I'll share my story. I'm an open book. I was very lonely. And dude, like meth it's a very like lustful drug, and it's very prevalent in certain communities, and one of those communities, as I found out, is the gay community. Now I'm not gay, but to be able to get meth and get it for free, I basically became a male prostitute. Dude, I started prostituting myself for meth. There's no two ways about it, and I didn't think it'd go that way. But I had a guy I was working with, and he'd mentioned that how prominent it was in that community. And dude, my addict brain was like, "Oh, that's how I get it." So, long story short, that's what happened, man. And dude, I just kept spiraling and spiraling. I get a job offer to move to Texas in 2019. That's when we found Marcus's body. We buried him in Pennsylvania. I've got a fresh start. I do another geographical. I get a job in Houston working as a research coordinator. and I stay sober for like a month and I relapse and I try to come back. I get sober for 2 months and relapse and I try to come back. And man, I'll never forget. And I'm sharing needles. Also in that community, HIV is fairly common. Risky sexual behavior goes hand in hand with methamphetamine. So I shared needles with maybe upwards of a dozen guys, and 2 of them were honest with me beforehand, and they said, "Dude, I've got HIV. Just a heads up." I said, "I don't care. Like, I needed a needle."
Wow.
And what ended up happening is and this is where Ibogaine had come into the picture. I'd gone down to Mexico several times to do Ibogaine and 5-MeO DMT and psilocybin and do anything to disconnect from whatever past had gotten me into addiction and connect to a new life or the prospect of a new life. And over and over and over again, it didn't work. I was in therapy from 2017 even to now, and I made a promise with my therapist. I said, "Look, if I relapse after this next Mexico trip, so go to Mexico, take Ibogaine, let's clear the air, let's reset everything and try again. If I relapse after that, I promise you I'll go back to rehab." And something else that happened in this time is there's this girl I had really strong feelings for, and dude, she just wanted nothing to do with me. She saw what she was dealing with, and I was a hopeless case, so she just completely ghosted me. And man, that broke my heart. It just shattered my heart into a million pieces. I was already lonely and hopeless, but that really like kind of stuck it in and twisted it.
That's
And
heavy, man.
it was yeah, it was a lot. It
When
was
you
November
when you would
2000. Yeah, go ahead.
when you would I guess, I mean, you're talking to somebody that hasn't done any drugs really. Then I've smoked weed a few times, right? But when you would I guess come off of these highs, was there a feeling of guilt, or was it like on to the next high?
Dude, huge guilt, huge shame, and also like a fighting spirit that I had that was like, okay, like, dude, you can do this, man. I'd be looking in the mirror and like cry, like bloodshot eyes, just emaciated, and I'm like, dude, you got to stop doing this. David Goggins style, and
Yeah.
I would try. Dude, I wanted to be sober. I didn't want to use anymore. That it's a mental obsession, and that thought would come to mind, and bro, I would be gone. Like, it would surprise me. So what ended up happening was I made a promise to my therapist. I said, if I go to Mexico and then relapse after that, I'll go back to rehab. Because dude, I was done with rehabs. 3 rehabs, like, what difference is it going to make? But I made a promise, and I made it 2 months, relapsed in about 3 days. And then I did something that I'd never done before, is I prayed on what to do. And I said, God, I have no idea what to do. I need help, and I don't know what to do. Show me what you want me to do. And a very calm feeling came over me, and dude, I'll never forget it. And the voice in my head, which, I mean, it sounded like my voice, but it wasn't my thinking, said, keep your word. You made a promise, keep your promise. And I let my therapist know, I let my family know, I let my friends know, and I contacted Warrior's Heart, and I got a bed. And December 8th, I pulled into the gates of Warrior's Heart, and I was still under the influence. They took my picture, which I ended up posting. So
What
that picture on the
this is
left and that
2020?
2020. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. December 9th, 2020 was my first full day sober. And they take an intake picture, and they had offered me to see it later on. And I was like, no, thanks. I'm good.
Yeah.
Please, no. But when I hit a year, I was like, send it. And they did. And that's when I posted. I was like, I can't believe I got to that level.
The first time
And
you saw that picture was today.
today, yeah,
Wow. Did it
yep,
bring back
today is
like
the first day.
memories? I mean, were you like, holy shit, it was that bad?
I just looked at myself, and I was like, it was like looking at a different person.
It is.
It's just exactly. It made me so unbelievably grateful for where I'm at today, and what happened between checking into Warrior's Heart for the second time and now is a very fortunate series of events. So I did the 6-week stay at Warrior's Heart, and then I go to sober living, and my plan for sober living was to stay there until I hit a year. Well, here's what happened, man. It was February, and dude, I just had so much depression. I mean, horrible depression. I was on FMLA for my job, and they wanted me to come back. They're like super understanding and supportive, and I thank them to this day for that. And dude, I couldn't do the simplest tasks. It was cognitive overload, and I just have to go for a walk or whatever. And then February, I checked myself back into the psych ward, man. I was clean and sober and just miserable and just wanted to die. I didn't know how to live. I was lonely. I'm 36 years old, former Navy SEAL, almost a master's educated, and I'm living in a 250 square foot room in an outfitted motel room. And I'm like, dude, I'm done. Well, what had happened was my family had made connections with a guy named Mark Owen. He wrote the book No Easy Day, and he had set up a clinic in Denver, a brain treatment clinic in Denver. You know, long story short, I had an appointment to talk to him that same day and talk about his treatment, and I didn't care about it. Something called MERT, whatever, brain yada yada. I'd done everything right. I didn't care. So I sent him a text, and I still have this text on my phone, and every text exchange we had after that. And I said, hey man, I won't be able to make the call today. I apologize. I'm going to the psych ward. I'm suicidal. I'm just having a hard time. And dude, what ended up happening was they set up a plane ticket, a rental car, and unlimited funding through an organization called SOCF, Special Operations Care Fund, for
Wow.
me to go there and to get treated. And I get out of the psych ward, I check my phone, I see all this updated information, and I still was afraid to leave because I don't trust my own thinking. So I asked for help, asked for guidance, and everyone's like, dude, go to Denver, go and get treated. And I met Mark and his wife. They're phenomenal people, man. I love them so much. We're family now. That I still live with them in Colorado. I got treated, and I responded wonderfully to treatment. Dude, my first day getting treated, I walk out of the clinic just grinning ear to ear. I go for a run. I'm listening to music. I got back into jujitsu. My sleep has gotten better. My anxiety and depression have stayed low. Um, and there's so many blessings after that. Getting baptized in April. Getting into a new relationship recently with a beautiful girl who's amazing. Dude, all the things that I wrote about, like that, but what's most important is the community. Mark and his wife became immediate family members with me, man. Like I can't say enough good things about them. That we're starting a new clinic. We're calling it Brain Fit. I'd walked away from everything. I walked away from the job. I walked away from school. I walked away from the nonprofit that I started with my friend Climb For. I just gave up on life. Dude, right now at a year sober, I got back with Climb For. We gained a bunch of funding to help a lot of veterans. We did our first ever retreat. We're starting this new clinic. We're going to help a bunch of other veterans. And one other thing is, so the organization that the funding went through, the Special Operations Care Fund, we start talking about like, hey, I did all these psychedelics and then I did MERT. I wonder like if there's a sequence that makes a bigger impact.
Right.
Now we're talking about that he called the Trifecta of Treatment, and SOCF asked me to coordinate it. So dude, like I'm paying off debt. My credit score is like a 750. It was barely like a 620 for like 2 years, man. I'm mostly out of debt. I'm a year sober and plus 1 day. And dude, like my life could not be better, but it took a lot of pain to get to this
Yeah.
point.
That's amazing, man. I mean, that's truly like a remarkable story, because with so many people that struggle with addiction, it doesn't go that way. With so many, right? And so to hear that, it's a beautiful thing. Can we talk a little bit about Ibogaine? I'm actually going to have Mark Mazzadellaflor on Sunday. I don't know if you know who
Great.
Mark is.
Yeah.
But we're going to talk about some of the natural medicine. I mean, obviously you did it 3 times with Ibogaine. Was that a powerful, I don't want to say it's not solution, obviously it didn't work right away, but was that impactful
Right.
to you? Do you feel like that was part of the solution? Or was it just something that maybe was as hyped up like it is the end all be all?
Definitely not hyped up. Well, I mean, like everybody's different, and I had three very powerful and impactful dude. Each time I came closer and closer to this thing that I call God, this universal energy or whatever intelligence people, whether you believe that or not. Shorthand, I call it God. I grew closer and closer to God. I grew closer and closer to this image that I was created in, and I saw things about me on this medicine. It was like this I never quit. I never give up. I gained a lot of respect and appreciation for just me breathing in and out. Like not me, the SEAL, not me, the this that did this or did that. Just breathing in and out, man. Just this thing that this living human being. I think it's very powerful. It's like the master psychedelic that I heard somebody say recently, and it gets to the heart of a lot of issues. Man, I've heard guys that go there, they do Ibogaine, they never drink again. I got guys that go there, they've done nothing but fight their whole lives. Now they're just like huggers and bring guys into the fold and just learn to love their kids and become better husbands and better whatever, man.
Right.
They want to like change their lives and give back. It's super super impactful. I think it's highly value added. Yeah, it's I think it played a huge part in why I responded to treatment, but where my path took me, I think it was all intended to go that way. So it
The
just helps me
first
to give meaning to life.
Right. Isn't from what I've heard, I could be wrong here. The first half is kind of like a pretty terrible experience, correct? Like the first part of the trip is pretty. I've heard it's like you kind of go through all the hell, and then you kind of go to like the good things and the
Some
different
guys,
outcomes.
yeah. I mean, everyone's experience has been different. Dude, my experiences were not that bad. All three of them were. I wouldn't say they were quite peaceful, but I think some guys fight it, and when you fight it, there's conflict, and when there's conflict, there's negative situations, or that's just the guy's archetype. That's just what their their soul has to go through to deal and unpack all this baggage. There's all sorts of different stories. Some guys go and stay in hell all night. um Mine was just kind of random colors, random images, and then random scenes, of me walking through like a cornfield or something. And they talk about what's called the noetic quality of the mystical experience. And the noetic quality means it doesn't make sense to me describing it to you, but when I'm in that moment, like something about it makes sense to me, like it's symbolic of something that doesn't necessarily have a correlation. So specifically, I'm walking across a cornfield and I come across a paved blacktop road, and I stop, I look up, and I start looking around. And what that meant to me was, hey man, take a break every once in a while and see how far you've come. That's the impression that I got under the medicine. But it's also got a lot of anti-inflammatory effects.
I did not know
It
that.
resets serotonin receptors. Yeah, dude. We're working. One of my friends is Dr. Kate Pate, and she does a podcast with it's a plant medicine podcast with Dr. Lynn Marie Morsky, and she's super smart, and she talks about the anti-inflammatory effects of like psilocybin and ayahuasca. She talks about the neurophysiological basis of some of these medications and these medicines. So there's something like healing that happens not only from the physiological benefits that are going on in the brain, but that spiritual noetic quality that is like a mind body thing that you can't get from one or the other alone. It has to be in
Right.
combination.
Right. That's amazing, man. I mean, like I said, this whole conversation has just been it's very powerful. I mean, you have an amazing story. Are you writing a book? I mean, I see your IG handle is sit still or sit say still. There we go. Um,
Yeah, it's the name of the book is going to be Sitting Still. The Instagram account is Sitting Still Book. And yeah, man, it's about the pause, the meditation. They say that prayers where we ask God and meditations where we listen, and it just puts the brakes on things. At least for me, it has, and that's a huge part of my current recovery and sobriety is taking time to reflect and just to listen. Yeah, writing a memoir right now. I'm about 114 pages in, um, uh, and looking to have it published and hopefully printed sometime next year. Yeah.
that's awesome, man. Real quick, anything you want to promote? Climb for sure. I know. Talk about that for a minute. Kind of what the actual niche is, what you guys do.
Yeah, Climb 4, so veteran owned and operated. So my friend Leslie Irby, she's on Instagram as Leslie_gets_lost. But if you go to the Climb 4 Instagram page, it's climb CLIMB 4 underscore. The website is climb-4.org. But dude, we recreate for veterans what we did for her. So she was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail to commemorate a veteran friend of her that committed suicide, a young lady named Candace Staub. And what we want to do is provide hiking and camping equipment for veterans to literally go hike and camp anywhere they want in the United States, in the world. We just put in an application, submit your DD-214. I think we're taking applications. I may be wrong about that. Sometimes we close it down to kind of regroup and regather. Also, we do fundraisers. Unfortunately, the SEAL Team 8 commander, the CO, died in a tragic accident. We're doing a fundraiser for him soon. There's another incident that came down that I don't want to talk about. I don't want to make headline news out of it, but an unfortunate mishap or a loss in the SEAL community. And we're doing a fundraiser for that individual as well. So Climb 4 is a great resource. Right now, we're just treating veterans, and we'll get you a ruck, a sleeping system, a cook system, and a tent or a hammock. So those are the 4 essential pieces of equipment, and we call it Climb 4. So climb, CLIMB-4.org.
I'm going to put all this in the show notes, and we'll make sure we send people who listen to this that way. Anything else you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
Yeah, man, it's my story involves a lot of faith these days and a lot of pain. If you're struggling with addiction or alcoholism, please reach out to me over Instagram. A couple of other people already have. I hope my story helps. This is not a self-promotional. Yeah, there's a memoir, but that's meant to help people too. Proceeds of the book will go to charitable organizations as well. We all have our story to tell. Keep fighting. If we give up, then we can't help anybody. And there is a plan, and sometimes it just involves a lot of pain. Reach out, ask for help, get involved with communities, and just lean on each other. That's all we have at the end of the day is each other. Reach out to me. I'll help as much as I can, but never give up ever.
Awesome, man. I can't say it better than that. Thank you so much for your time. It was an honor to have you here. All right, everyone. That is all for today. Please do me a favor and support Mikey by following his personal Instagram at Sitting Still Book and his nonprofit at Climb 4. That's Climb the number 4. He's doing wonderful things, and I want to support in any way I can. I'm really excited about seeing what Mikey will accomplish in the future, and I hope to have him back on the show if he wishes. As always, please help me expand the audience of this podcast by sharing it with your friends and family. I love having these conversations and learning from my guests, and I want to reach as many people as possible. If you could, go follow the podcast on Instagram at the ReFounded Project and on Facebook at the ReFounded Project. Also, if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave a rating or review, that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.